Welcome to Blockstars, Ripple's podcast where we sit down with the builders and thinkers shaping the future of crypto and blockchain. I'm your host, Ripple CTO David Schwartz. Today we're exploring a milestone moment for stablecoins, and for Europe in particular. With EURØP, Schuman Financial has issued the first fully compliant euro-backed stablecoin on the XRP Ledger. It's part of a bigger trend we're seeing, high-quality fiat-backed stablecoins going live across XRPL, from USD to SGD to Euro, unlocking real utility for institutions and users worldwide. Joining me today is Martin Bruncko, co-founder and CEO at Schuman Financial. We'll be discussing why the euro matters on-chain, what institutions are looking for in stablecoins, and how cross-border payments and finance are being reshaped in real time. Welcome, Martin.
Thank you, David. It's great to be here. Hi, everyone. Excited to speak a little bit about Europe and euro-related topics on what I presume is often a dollar-based podcast.
I got to ask before we start, EURØP, what's the official right way to pronounce it? Is there one?
So I think internally we call it EURØP because it's just more clear and more unique, I guess. But, you know, the whole idea was to make EURØP or Europe as close to Europe as possible.
Gotcha. So let's start with your story before we talk about the technology. What led you to start Schuman Financial? What gap in the market were you hoping to fill? What are you trying to do?
So look, I've been in technology for most of the past 15 to 20 years, but I also have a traditional finance background. I actually used to be a deputy finance minister of Slovakia. I was part of the Eurogroup. I actually co-authored Slovakia's euro adoption strategy because we didn't always have euro before. And so I, having always lived in Europe, at some point a few years back, I was asked to help restructure Binance in Europe. And as I was running Europe, it became very clear that we were in this funny situation where, we were arguably the largest crypto-based company operating in Europe, where you have like 500 million people. We were increasingly trying to target more mainstream users. And kind of everybody in Europe works on the euro, right? But the entire platform was working on the dollars. And including in ways where, for example, when we run a marketing campaign, we would tell people, hey, bring your friend on the platform and we will pay you $20, right? So it's kind of equivalent, I guess, to a marketing campaign in the US saying, hey, bring your friend as a customer and we pay you 100 pesos. Maybe not as extreme, but not very far, right? So we basically realized, even when I was at Binance, that you can't really expect to bring crypto and blockchain completely mainstream in a mature market like Europe, with again 500 million people, which operates on euros and have everything dollarized. And so the way out of that, obviously, is to build or to have a really strong, transparent euro stablecoin.
I wish I had an hour to ask you about what it's like to transition the country's currency. That sounds like there's a lot of interesting challenges there. I don't know if launching a stablecoin is harder or less hard.
Actually, it's more difficult, I think, to launch a euro stablecoin than it was to swap from the Slovakian currency, Slovak crown, to euros. At least that's what it feels like. In any case, we had a lot fewer people and resources building this than we had as a government in Slovakia.
I would imagine. Did the experience translate and help with the stablecoin launching process?
Not necessarily directly, but what has actually really helped is having been part of this group of people that essentially runs European finance, because euro and actually just generally economic policy in Europe, it's not really done that much at the national level. Like everything, all the key decisions are more or less done by the ministers of finance of individual countries, but they are kind of done jointly. And obviously, euro run via ECB is run from Frankfurt, but there again, you have all the central bankers from all the national countries that use the euro. So it's actually very helpful to know how these people feel and think. And it's also good to have some access to them still. And, when they take you seriously, because you're not just another crypto dude, you're kind of one of us.
So let's talk about stablecoins. Stablecoins are increasingly recognized not just as a crypto tool, but as infrastructure for the digital economy. On the XRP Ledger, we're seeing US dollar, Singapore dollar, euro-denominated stablecoins live on-chain, all fully regulated, fully backed, and designed for institutional use. Why do you think it's important for Schuman Financial to bring a euro stablecoin to the XRP Ledger?
We think that the main use case for stablecoin is going to be not in crypto, which is the case now, but it's really going in traditional finance. We deeply, strongly believe that blockchain is just a better technology for storing and moving financial value than anything else we've had. Similar to internet being just so much better at storing and moving information, which is why it was so successful. And, finally, and thank God, the traditional financial markets and players, they are waking up and realizing this. And as this happens, we believe that you will end up with a huge financial market effectively run on chain. And for this, you do need a stable coin to settle, but a stable coin should also be run on a ledger that is highly trustworthy, highly transparent, highly efficient. From our perspective, XRP, that's the OG among the blockchains when it comes to blockchains being built for traditional finance, right? So that really makes a difference. This whole attitude of kind of institutional strength, compliance first, transparent, safe, secure.
As I'm sure you know, the dollar has significantly dominated stablecoins so far, but the euro is the world's second most traded currency and, a significant part of global trade flows. How do you see people using a euro stablecoin like EURØP, both in Europe, globally? What do you think?
So, as I mentioned, the main use case for stablecoins until now has really been for crypto trading, and that market has been mainly denominated or pretty much uniquely denominated in US dollars, right? So, there are some opportunities there. And, even in Europe, you have exchanges where actually people are trading in Bitcoins and, XRP, etc., against euros. So it definitely helps. But where we think the main real value added will be is really, in traditional financial services as these are moving on chain. And payments is one particularly good example. It's payment, but it's not just payments, right? I think if you look at pretty much any type of financial service market, the euro-denominated market, whether it's like banking assets and liabilities or payments, again, for that matter, the euro-denominated market is roughly a third of the dollar-denominated market. So this is huge. And as far as we're concerned, it's not going to change. So if we want to accelerate this transition on chain, we think it's important to have a really strong euro stablecoin with a really deep ecosystem around it.
So you think the adoption is going to come from institutional sources mostly?
Well, I think it's going to come mainly from the acceleration and the real growth. I think will come more from the traditional finance side, right? So that doesn't necessarily mean institutional, but it could be retail, but it's for applications that are more on the TradFi side of things rather than on the pure crypto trading side.
What about settlement of tokenized securities within Europe? Do you think that will be a use case for euro stablecoins like EURØP?
For sure. Actually, I was at an event in Brussels, incidentally, or not maybe incidentally, organized by Ripple a couple of days ago, with really some of the top people from the European institutions, including European Commission, ECB, central banks. And it's very clear that actually there is a real interest to really start moving things on chain, not just among the quote unquote, crypto and fintech guys, but really among the regulators, like the decision makers. And of course, the TradFi sector has completely now woken up and they're super keen to go ahead with the accelerations.
One of the XRP Ledger's strengths is that stablecoins can plug directly into its built-in DEX, with XRP providing a bridge for cross-currency settlement. So someone holding USDC or RLUSD could swap into EURØP in seconds. How do you see that kind of interoperability driving adoption?
Look, for us, this is an absolutely key use case or key product, right? If you actually look at the USD to Euro FX trading pairs, this is one of the largest financial products and / financial markets globally, right? When we looked at the numbers a while back, and I'm sure they haven't changed all that much, essentially the daily trading in dollar to euro trading pair, I mean, we're talking TradFi, right? But the daily volume was roughly an order of magnitude higher than all of the crypto trading of all of the crypto pairs on all of the crypto centralized exchanges, right? So just gives you a sense how huge this market is. And so if we can dip into this market, I mean, literally, if we could just do 10% of it and bring it on chain, that's the equivalent of all of the crypto trading today of everything else. And the interesting thing is that this market, particularly if you're unless you're a really large institutional player, like this market is not functioning very well, right? I mean, if you are even a small or even medium-sized business, actually even decently large business, you're trying to send euros from your euro account to dollars, to a dollar bank account in the US. It's gonna take you a few days for the money to arrive, and you're probably gonna be paying a good, 30 to 50, if not more, bips for the conversion, right? And so with this product that we've actually built, we now have a payment product where you can send your euros from your European bank account and you receive dollars literally like in a couple of minutes tops, right? Not couple of days, couple of minutes tops. So that's just this specific product. But I think more broadly, what this XRP against RLUSD on this DEX means is that you get super fast and essentially free movement between euros and dollars. And that's really, talking about like really world-changing, tech impact. I mean, I think this is it.
Yeah, the predictable and low transaction fees are important. Is it important that the ledger is available 24/7, weekends, holidays, Christmas? Does that matter?
Yeah, of course. I mean, again, there's nothing more annoying, right? Than when you need to send money on like Friday, actually 5 p.m. and your bank tells you, sorry, cut off. It was at 4 p.m. So you can input today, but we'll process it on Monday. And hopefully the other person will receive it on Wednesday or the other entity, right? So I think, and there you're no longer talking 2 days. You're talking still two working days, but potentially 5 calendar days, right? So again, of course, this is a big deal.
Is it challenging operating legal compliance on a public blockchain?
Increasingly less so, right? Because, you're starting to get so many tools, and public blockchain is a public ledger, right? So with all of the transaction history and the analytics that's available, I think it's becoming increasingly easier to really review all the transactions and do compliance, quote unquote, natively. So like without having to do some, secondary analytics, you can just basically build it based on the built-in feature of the blockchain.
So you have blockchain features like freeze and clawback to deal with legal process. And I imagine that you use companies like Chainalysis and Elliptic to, adhere to the, the various regulatory requirements.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's becoming pretty standard now.
Yeah, it was very challenging to figure out how you would do that. And at least now the regulator, you're not going to be the first person to talk to the regulators. Makes life a lot easier.
Look, the regulators are also learning, right? So we were actually, lucky/unlucky that our license that we have, basically, we were the very first ones to apply, or the people who have built the original license. We actually acquired the company that license process ongoing. They were the very first one in France to apply for a stablecoin license, right? So the regulator was actually learning how these things work. And there's still, there's still times they're very transparent with us when they tell us, look, guys, sorry if we're a bit slower, we're still learning, but they're learning fast. And so I think, again, compliance on chain should be a lot easier, faster, and painless, including for the actual users of the financial product run on chain.
So you talked about how the initial adoption in stablecoins was for a sort of retail DeFi use case, mostly speculation, trading cryptocurrencies. And we talked about how we think that institutional flows are going to be the next wave. But I hope we can get back to some DeFi growth and, a bridge between traditional and decentralized finance, providing new use cases on Ledger, ideally for retail users. Do you think that's going to happen? And do you think Schuman's going to be a part of that?
Yeah, for sure. We're working on that, right? And particularly for kind of lending and borrowing and yield-bearing products, we definitely see real demand there. So yeah, and that's one of the exciting areas where there's also quite large potential for Euro stablecoins to grow, right? Right now, basically, most of DeFi is denominated in USDC, but most of the world doesn't operate on the dollar. So it makes perfect sense if I just look at it as a European, customer, our European, my income is in euros. I operate every day in euros. So for me to have to convert my euros into dollars, and then invest it in dollars and run the FX risk, it just doesn't make any sense. It just makes so much more sense if I could get the yield on my euro savings. So yeah, definitely something that we're very actively working on in Schuman and with EURØP.
What kind of target customers do you see both in the short term and the longer term? Small companies, large companies, fintechs, payment providers?
So yeah, I would say on the kind of real world application side, it's mainly payments providers, or it's basically the payments use cases, right? So we are working with various payments providers. We think this is actually a really interesting use case because right now, most of the payments via stablecoin is being done by these orchestrators. It's a great start. It works, but it works until it doesn't. The problem with all these orchestrators is that if you don't control the entire flow of payments, something goes wrong at any part of the payment chain and the whole thing just falls apart. It takes longer, it's more fragile, it's also more expensive. What we're excited about as an issue as of a Euro stablecoin, fully licensed, including for payments or electronic money, that we can process everything, the entire flow ourselves. So we're now starting to see more and more customers. Both sort of kind of the end customers, but also payment processors and even the payment orchestrators are realizing that, well, maybe we should just use these guys because they can process most of essentially the entire payment flow for us.
Definitely one blocker to sort of end user adoption of stablecoins and even DeFi is the challenge of I have all this money in this DeFi system or in the stablecoin, but I need to pay my phone bill. I need to pay my landlord. That last mile is really challenging, isn't it?
It is, right? But again, what we're doing is we're trying to build this smooth interface, a bit of a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde product where you're both a stablecoin and a normal fiat euro, right? And essentially where you just have your wallet and you don't really know if this is euro, almost quote unquote, almost don't know if it's euro fiat or euro stablecoin because they just sit there. They're perfectly interchangeable. And when you need to send it into DeFi, you just send it and it just leaves as EURØP, as a stable coin. But if you need to pay for your phone or whatever mobile operator, you just send the money out into a bank account via SEPA. And it just, again, leaves your wallet and you don't really care because, yeah, it's a single account, so to speak.
Institutions, and I guess end users too, really care about liquidity. How does EURØP help to do that?
In what sense?
Well, if they have EURØP and they need to convert into some other asset or vice versa, payment flows, there needs to be some liquidity between the stablecoin and other assets.
So, there's two ways, right? The liquidity between EURØP and fiat, it's instant and infinite in the sense that, or quasi-instant and infinite, that we have a platform where, if you're onboarded into our platform, we have auto buy, kind of auto sell kind of capabilities, fully integrated with the banking channel. So if you send us in Europe, we have, SEPA, Single European Payments Area payment. I guess equivalent of ACH, except better. From the moment you click on send to the moment you receive your EURØP, it's literally 10, 20 seconds, tops, right? And it doesn't matter how much money you need. Because right now there's been actually limits on these instant payments on the banking side, but ECB is now removing them actually as we speak. So probably by the end of the year, we should be in a situation where most banks should be able to, send instant payments in the millions of euros. That means that we can instantly provide you with millions of EURØP. And then we're also working with, OTC desks for now. Like we don't have it in-house. Eventually we will. But for now, we also work with OTC desks that can then help process, let's say the conversions trading to USDC or any other token, which, as long as that token is very highly liquid, you can very easily move it to EURØP. Because even if our EURØP pair is not very liquid, you can then go through other instruments that are highly liquid, whether it's USDC or others.
Yeah, one of my earliest visions for the XRP Ledger was this idea of sort of open pools of liquidity that anybody could contribute to and draw off, so you could find these paths even if the exact exchange you wanted to make, you couldn't necessarily find someone that wanted to go in the other direction. As an American, I tend to forget that the rest of the world exists. It's something that we do because we're kind of isolated, or at least mentally. But, people tend to forget that Europe has been a leader with SEPA and removing the limits, with MiCA, one of the first comprehensive regulatory regimes for stablecoins. Do you see Europe as a global leader in setting standards for digital assets and payments in the regulatory field and so on?
Yeah, I mean, look, as one American friend once told me, like, you Europeans always undersell everything and we always oversell it in America. And so we love to be so critical of Europe and like how nothing works in Europe. And I think it's also part of the reason why Europe has such a negative image, even in the US, right? Because if you have a neighbor who comes to you and every time tells you like how shitty, his household is and his whole family, at some point you probably start believing that it's probably pretty shitty. And so I think that problem in Europe we have is not necessarily always that we don't deliver great technology or that we're not at the forefront. We just very often, we don't really even acknowledge it. And so I think when it comes to fintech, I mean, Europe has actually been a global leader ahead of America. Like it was ahead of US. We had all of these, and a lot of it was driven by regulatory loosening or even actually in certain cases, it was not even loosening. It was actually, regulatory requirements such as open banking, which basically forced the incumbent to open up to any kind of fintech so that they could access the money sitting in the accounts of these, old 100-year-old often behemoths. So I think Europe has actually built some really very good fintech companies over the past 10, 15 years. A lot of it was driven by regulation. And indeed, I think when it comes to crypto, we were, ahead of the US, right, with MiCA. I think the problem we do have in Europe, so, okay, now I'm switching back to my European self. Like, we do have problems, right? And it's like, indeed, when the US regulators wake up, they usually tend to be much more effective and faster than we are in Europe. And so I think we've had a head start and we'll see how things go. I mean, for now, things could be worse. Things could definitely be worse.
I definitely think Europe set a tone for responsible innovation, and that influenced how other regions approach stablecoins too, and helped to drive, innovation and regulatory change in the US as well. Not that I want to admit that as an American.
Look, we all know, right? It's always up and down, like everywhere. No matter where you live, the grass is always greener. And I think, we've seen it, like things were really, US was falling really behind on crypto just a couple of years ago, when now it's really the front runner. And but I think it's good when you have this competition like that it keeps people focused, including the regulators or the political decision makers. So I'm quite optimistic when it comes to Europe. Eventually we get it right.
You just have to try everything else first.
Yeah, sadly, right. So, and this is kind of the difference between, I think, Europe and particularly China. In China, the way the government thinks and regulator thinks, they think like, tech entrepreneurs, right? Like you just, you're fast and you iterate. And, you want to make sure that you get it kind of 90% right. And then, if you get it 90% right in a market with 10,000 participants, it means that you have killed 1,000 participants, but you don't particularly care. Because then you draw a lesson, you iterate, and then maybe in the next round, you only kill 5,000 participants. I mean, I don't mean physically, obviously, right? But like destroy these companies. And so, you're fast, you iterate, you'll probably get faster to, faster to the result. In Europe, the problem we have is everything takes forever, right? So like in MiCA, we're not discussing, or actually digital euro. speaking of stablecoins, right? So the European finance minister finally agreed like a couple of weeks ago on the plan. Okay, we are going to introduce digital euro. And we're going to be very effective because we need to move fast because these bloody Americans now, with all the stable coins, they might take over Europe. So we're going to be really fast, which means that we will, God willing, have a digital euro by or as soon as the end of 2028, latest 2029. So, we're talking 3+ years, right? So it just shows you like how slow things are sometimes.
So I have this tradition where I always ask my guests to get out their crystal ball. Guests usually don't like to do this, but I force them to make predictions about the future. I think we agree stablecoins like RLUSD and EURØP are just the start. So over the next year or 2 years, what excites you the most about the future of on-chain finance?
What really excites me is that people in traditional finance are finally starting to get blockchain, right? And how transformative this is. And I think this is really, really a big deal for all of us in this industry because financial services is just such a huge industry. And when even a small part of that industry opens up to this new technology, well, not so new anymore, but for them, relatively speaking, still new technology, and start adopting it, it means that the industry in which we are is, going to be growing by orders of magnitude. And I think also exciting, just as a simple user of financial services, right? We all use them. And the fact that I will finally be able to send dollars, in a couple of minutes when I need to send them and from my euros. It might seem trivial, but it's not. You don't understand how annoying it has been. Even if I just wanted to buy more Bitcoins because they've all been, my main markets have been dollar denominated. So I had to buy them against the dollars. And dude, tried sending euros to from a European bank to a dollar account of a crypto exchange. Crazy, right? So anyway, all of this excites me. I think we're at the beginning of a real transformation. I think it's finally coming, and what I'm really most excited about is the things that I cannot even imagine right now, right? Because again, this is how early we are, and that's the thing with transformational technologies. You can't even imagine at the beginning the new product and services that will be coming up when people figure out how to use these technologies.
Yeah, it's not just digital euros. Stablecoins like EURØP are going to reshape how money moves, reduce friction, and unlock institutional adoption at a global scale, and then pave the way for more retail DeFi adoption.
100%.
Thank you so much, Martin, for joining us today.
Well, thanks for that, David. Absolutely. If you want to know more about EURØP, you can find out all about it on our LinkedIn under Schuman Financial. We also have a Twitter feed with EURØP stablecoin. Try it out. We're available in most of the, pretty much all of the centralized exchanges in Europe and globally, and increasingly in DeFi.
That's it for today's episode of Blockstars. Follow me on X at Joel Katz, JoelKatz, and don't forget to subscribe to @RippleXDev for the latest on XRPL. See you next time.